The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. My name is Laura Murphy, and I am the Operations and Communications Director for National Technology Alliance. And I'm pleased to moderate our discussion today about the Defense Business Accelerator Microelectronics Challenge. And to do that, I'm joined by two panelists, Christopher Zimber, Z, who's a Senior Fellow for Industrial-Based Resilience, supporting the industrial-based policy audience for the Pentagon. He's going to provide insight from the Department of Defense perspective, and he's going to outline a little bit more about why the project started and what we hope to achieve with the challenge and with the accelerator. And I'm also joined by Nathan Edwards, who's the Executive Director of U.S. Partnership for Assured Electronics, USPAE, who's going to speak about the challenge operations, how you can best position yourself to become a finalist, and ultimately to win up to $2 million for your innovation and funding. So if you have any questions now or at any time, please ask them using the GoToWebinar control panel. There's a questions tab there, and anything you put in there, we will be sure to answer, whether we do that live today or after the fact. If we can't get to everything in our short 45-minute allocation, we will make sure that we get in touch with you. So be sure you ask any question you have, and we'll post those responses also where possible to our FAQ. So looking at the website as well is a great place to find some responses to the questions that are asked. So without further ado, to give us some background and tell us all about the inspiration behind the Defense Business Accelerator, I'd like to welcome Z, Chris Zimber.
Thank you so much, Laura, and thanks for hosting this and for setting this up, and thanks to everyone for attending. We have quite a few folks online already, and I know a handful of others that are planning on joining. So this particular project is part of a portfolio in the Industrial-Based Policy Office called the Big Plays. The Big Plays are looking at alternative business models that really take advantage of some dynamics across the market that allow us to leverage the commercial market, leverage regional ecosystems, and leverage public-private partnerships to rapidly rebuild the domestic industrial base. The Defense Business Accelerator as a concept really came out of some research by the Army Research Lab and some work being done by the Pentagon to engage in dual-use technology development. As we've recognized, especially over the last 10 years, the commercial market is leading in a lot of areas that are critical for national security. And so that's caused us to reframe our acquisition model and our way of engaging industry, as well as our way of funding projects. As we looked at most of these, and you see up on the screen a graphic that our partners with the Army Research Lab put together in building this out, you've got this dirt road of bureaucracy that we've drawn across the bottom of the system. Many of the innovation offices, like most of the innovation programs, are focused on reaching into the commercial market and pulling technologies out of the commercial market into DoD. And that's really fantastic, and that's very important and essential for us to accelerate the access to commercial technologies that are relevant to defense systems. But we ask the question, what about technologies that start out with a focus on defense needs? Are they stuck going through this very slow and treacherous dirt road of bureaucracy, navigating the various mechanisms that we have that hopefully are easier, like small business innovative research programs, STTRs, OTAs, all fantastic resources. But the commercial market is well known for being very adept at rapidly growing technologies and leveraging the buying power of the market to rapidly scale technologies. And so within the Industrial-Based Policy Office, our focus is on transitioning R&D into applications and growing the production capability of the industrial base. And so we asked the question, could we actually more rapidly develop defense capabilities by pushing defense-focused, hardware-intensive early-stage technologies into the commercial market and leveraging that buying power of the commercial market to accelerate the growth of those technologies and then pull those back into DoD through the programs such as the Defense Innovation Unit and other commercially focused offices within the Pentagon. And so DBX was born to test that hypothesis. And so in addition to delivering the capabilities that we're seeking through this project, we're also testing a business model that we would ultimately plan on applying not just more broadly across the microelectronics space, but across other markets that are of relevance that have a commercial application. And so within this program, Nathan will be describing what USPAE is going to be leading as our lead performer for executing this project. But we will be selecting a handful of companies to receive the resources and support of this program in pursuing commercialization first. And then we will be measuring those companies and how they mature in terms of technology readiness level, manufacturing readiness level, and business model maturity, which we have some mechanisms for assessing that. How those mature compared to a control group of companies that conduct business in the normal mechanisms. And so that's our approach. That's what the model's all about. And so I know, we have a limited time here, but with that background, I wanted to hand it over to Nathan to walk through the project and the selection process, and then open it up to questions from you all. So Nathan, over to you.
Thanks, C. So this the focus area obviously is in the electronics sector. If you can look at this list, and we have this posted to the DBX website, it's pretty broad. And so think about, there are probably some questions about limitations or what are we after. I mean, this, again, keep in mind, is very different than any of the RFPs or VAAs that are out there for DoD. And I know there's going to be probably a number of proposers that fall into the other category as well. But really, it's about technologies that are can be commercialized and dual use for the commercial sector and DoD. So if there's any questions really related to your technology and you want to propose, we do have an information site, and you can post your question there. We'll get to it for sure, as Laura Lee had mentioned. So how this is going to work, we'll have probably 5 to 10 projects, $500,000 up to $2 million each towards commercialization. The benefit really to you is that it'll take days to weeks for you to receive funding. USPA as a consortium, we have other transaction agreement, which allows us to execute on this funding without waiting for government contract delays. So we've already worked that for you. And so after our final selection, again, it'll be pretty rapid. Now, your projects for commercialization can range from 6 months, 18-month period of performance, kind of up to you to propose in your business plan and what you want to accomplish. Throughout the process, we'll be providing support. I say we, really it's us, USP, ATI, Tech Connect, and the government team provide support in commercializing your technology. We want this to succeed. It is an experiment to really try it out, but there's a lot of connection opportunities, whether it's with venture capital or other market analysis and other venues to really support you in that. We're going to measure the overall success, with technology readiness level, manufacturing readiness level, and some other metrics, again, to see how that maturity progresses throughout your performance. Keep in mind, this is very lightweight. It is not a typical government contract where you have weekly, monthly, quarterly reporting. And so we're kind of excited about this, again, with a focus on commercialization. Now, the selection panel criteria, it's going to be made up of mostly technology business leaders and investors. Yes, we will have some DoD representation on the selection panel, but mostly it's, again, towards commercialization. Which tends not to be the government's focus. There's several criteria that you can see on the right-hand side of this. Again, this is all on the website, and you can kind of see how the point weighted categories are. And it's pretty even across the board. So if you come from the R&D domain, you might see more points towards technology, right? This is not. This we have to include all of it. All of it leads to success in the commercialization effort. Now the process, it's pretty rapid. So what do we mean by that? In about a week and a half, October 12th is the deadline that we have currently posted for proposals. It's fortunately very lightweight. I have a snapshot of the form, and this is one of 2 pages on the form. You'll see a couple of text box entries to describe your technology, a couple of other categories. It should not take you that long. This is not a 20-pager. This is not a 100-pager that you typically would do for BAA. Again, the idea is to capture your concepts towards commercialization and move rapidly without all the other challenges that we typically see in the administrative domain. So October 12th, that's a Thursday. We'll notify the semifinalists. That's the initial down selection within about a week period of time. And then that will be down selected even more. 20, 30 or so companies will be invited to attend our pitch event, which is the week after Thanksgiving. So November 28th and 30th. That's coordinated with the Tech Connect defense in the fall at National Harbor. And so more details will come about that, but that's really the target of our dates and for your proposal. What will happen though is that during your proposal phase, if you happen to be one of the finalists, we require everybody to become a member of USPA and the Defense Electronic Consortium before you attend the pitch event. Now, there's probably some elements in your own business that you may have to update or register with the government. For example, you need a SAM.gov unique entity identifier. We have a lot of tutorials on how to accomplish that. It can have a little bit of lead time, so just keep that in mind. Many of you already have that already since you have prior government contracts. Easy application form for USP and the Defense Electronic Consortium. And what's important to know is the member dues are covered for winners of this. Normally, it's just $1,000 a year for each organization. But again, we don't want any barriers to entry for this program. And you can see our consortium, our members are made up across the whole electronics ecosystem. So with that, that's the end of the show. The presentation slides, that is. This is where you submit your questions and for answers. We have a frequently asked question page on here as well. But let's open the doors for Q&A so we can spend most of our time this afternoon on that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, both of you, for speaking a bit about the challenge. We do already have a number of questions, and please feel free to keep those coming. We'll get to as many as we can. So one of them is from Walter Burgess. Walter asked, how will the size of the awards be determined? Some projects require a minimum level of financing to be available. For example, a $2 million project wouldn't be viable at $500,000. So Chris, can you speak a little bit more about maybe the selection process and criteria?
Yeah, absolutely. So, essentially, we've set that range. We are going to be assessing the various selection criteria, and there's no simple rule of this project is going to get 500K versus this project is going to get 2 million. We're going to be looking at what the needs are of the project based on the objectives, and we're going to be weighing that against the other proposals that we receive. And so, without knowing what all those proposals are, I can't say exactly what the calculus is going to be. Other than that, certainly we're going to be weighing the proposals against one another, and we have a finite amount of $10 million available for this initial stage of this effort overall. And we want to make sure that we're selecting at least 5 companies, somewhere between 5 and 10. We're going to be also looking at covering a range of different areas across the market. And so again, that's going to be a function of the proposals that we receive, and what comes in. So it's really a function of that, with the basic guidance that you should be proposing something based on what the needs are and what your objectives are, and we'll be assessing it based on that. We didn't want to set a definitive single amount, but set a range based on recognizing that there are, as the questioner asked, there are different needs for different projects.
Thank you. We have a couple of questions related to the technology readiness level. Can you speak to what range may be most desirable for the program?
Yeah, so I'm happy to answer that up front, and then Nathan, of course, if you want to add more. So we do want to be measuring TRL maturity, so coming into the program versus going out of the program. So if we had something come in at the max TRL 9, that's not going to give us room for measuring TRL growth. So we don't want something that's that high. On the other side, something coming in at the very early stage. It takes a long time to move from TRL 1 to 2 or 3. So I would say targeting between TRL 3 and 6 in general, but we don't want to create a hard constraint there. But that is where we anticipate the most successful pitches will be focused in on that TRL 3 to 6 range, with a measurable plan for maturing that over the 6 to 18 months of the period of the project.
Awesome.
And I'll just second what Z had mentioned, especially at the boundaries of TRL 3 and then up at 6. Those of you who develop technologies, been in the R&D domain, you know that it's a little bit squishy. You'll know your technology and where you're at. The government has posted definitions. NASA is a great website for providing information. DoD has some of that as well. But just keep in mind, somewhere in that middle stage. So your definition of a TRL 3 may be slightly different than somebody's else, but that's okay. Please submit your concepts for this.
Great. I've got a couple of questions related to number of entries. Is it possible for someone to submit multiple entries?
Yes, absolutely. So rather than focusing this exclusively at the business level, we're focusing this at the technology level. And so we want, even though we're going to be measuring the business model, we'll be measuring the business model related to that technology. And as we've been developing with our partners at Fluent, who operates the Fluency Score, which is a business model risk measurement mechanism, kind of measuring product market fit through some empirical sources and used by folks across the investment community. We've tailored that to make sure that we're measuring it at the business surrounding that particular technology, so that companies can in fact submit individual technologies, and also so that we're not incorrectly measuring the business model for maybe some larger, more mature companies that happen to propose. This is not just focused on new start companies or startups, but also new lines of effort that could be coming from well-established businesses across the industrial base. Growing the domestic industrial base can come from new companies entering the market, but it can also come from new product lines from existing companies, and we want to have a balanced approach across those.
Great. Jane asked, is it possible for a U.S. subsidiary of a Finnish company, or we could say a different, any country maybe, to participate in this project? So can you speak a little bit about the U.S. requirement?
Yeah, so we follow the DFARS regulations on U.S. incorporation and allied countries. So if you have incorporation in the United States, that's critical. Subsidiaries, there is some more extensive requirements on foreign operation and control of that. So I will say, if you have U.S. incorporation, let's start there. We'll evaluate as we go.
Yeah, and on that point, one of the reasons, Nathan mentioned the membership, that we've set that membership and waived any cost related to that. DoD's covering the membership cost. But one of the reasons we did that is we've got some established processes through USPAE and the Defense Electronics Consortium that allows us to, number one, lay some of the foundation and groundwork that's going to be required to execute a contract. So that allows us to check those boxes and cover that groundwork up front, so we can more rapidly execute the contract and get money into the awardees' hands once they are selected. And then number two, addressing this foreign ownership, control, and influence, or FOCI, requirement. We are going to have some things for the finalists where we're going to be assessing that and using some best practice tools, not just done in Bradstreet reporting requirements, but also some discovery on our own part to make sure we're assessing and vetting companies and applicants for foreign ownership, control, and influence before we make the award decisions.
So if you want that complete list, if you go to the USPA.org website and you click on the membership button, there's the membership agreement, and at the very end of that, it has the list. We copied that right out of the DFARS regulations. that has all the 27 allied countries listed.
Awesome. Let's see here. Ava asked, is there room for interpretation within the topic areas, or do they have to have certain specifications? Is there anything specific within those?
So yeah, the technology topic areas, there is absolutely room for interpretation. We know that innovation, especially in the electronics sector, there's not hard boundaries of things. There might be minute differences from one technology to the other. I'll say the hard requirement is it has to be electronics. The Department of Defense would be interested in and have that dual use capability.
Okay. Nick asked, can professors with technology they want to commercialize enter?
So we're going to be assessing the business. So if you don't have a business formed around the technology yet, I think that is something that we would be interested in having a conversation about, but I don't think that's going to be a successful application based on measuring the business side of things. We did leave it open though, that we haven't fully restricted that up front. But I think it is important to weigh your time and effort in submitting the application against the criteria that Nathan highlighted, and just understand what criteria you're going to be evaluated against. So we haven't prohibited that, but the measures for the selection criteria are predisposed towards measuring something that would be an existing business.
Thank you, that's helpful. Leo asked, are letters of interest to be from government offices like the U.S. Air Force Office, or can letters of interest come from a government program manager as their personal opinion only?
So it's a very good question. So we want it to be a formal letter expressing the interest. It certainly can be, or an award, right? So if you've received funding from the DoD or funding as a subcontractor that's through the DoD, that meets the precondition, or a letter of interest from a contracting office or a letter of interest from a program office. Those all qualify. We wanted to set that as entrance criteria because we want to really accelerate the selection process rather than opening it up to trying to assess defense interest and then sort of push companies into the commercial market. So a good question.
Okay. Let's see. Here's a question from Jerome. If these technologies are originally funded by DoD, then they go commercial, and then those commercial things are brought back into the DoD, what ITAR and employment restrictions are there? That's something.
Wow, that's a great question. Keep in mind that the dual use technology is important, right? There are certain technologies that are not dual use. They have stringent ITAR constraints around them. So we want to keep that in mind. Now, if the DoD brings those back in after it's been commercialized, we might still have export control laws. That's Department of Commerce EAR. And so they have another list. Those two offices talk. I would say address that down the road as we go. The goal of this is towards the commercial markets, knowing that DoD could potentially access. And we see this all the time, right? With some of the semiconductors, some of the crypto systems, some of the other IT or sensors, et cetera, right? And so some of those technologies are not allowed to be exported, but they're certainly available for commercial use in the United States.
Awesome, thank you. I know that one was a great question. Marin asked, do we have to be registered on sam.gov for the October 12th submission deadline?
No. That would be a requirement before the pitch event. And so, I mean, it's highly suggested to work through that process right now. There are a number of electronics sector funded activities going on. We heard from some of our colleagues, there's I think 4 or 5 other requests for proposals at this moment. So I would suggest do that anyway, but for the DBX, it's not required up until the pitch event.
Great, thank you. David asked, can you share more about what you expect to see in the commercialization strategy document? So Chris, maybe are you able to share just thoughts, maybe reiterate kind of what would be nice to see there?
Absolutely, yeah. So we want to understand the company's baseline of your commercialization plan, and really understanding what the needs are of the market, what the total addressable market is for your particular project. And again, these aren't preconditions, right? So just take these as some thoughts. But I think looking up what is typically required, what a good commercialization plan takes on and addresses just the basics. There is all we would be looking for. And I want to emphasize that as a part of this project, we are assessing our ability to help you with commercialization as well. And so we're not expecting that you have your commercialization plan perfect and that you can't use any help. In fact, our ability to help you with commercialization for those selectees is going to be part of our measurement. And so we recognize that companies are not necessarily going to have a solid, perfect commercialization plan, but we're asking you to address it just so we know what you've already thought about and what you haven't thought about, and where you might need some help in that area. I don't know, Nathan, if you want to talk more about that at all.
I think you covered it very well. Again, if there's more details that you need for to help answer your question, please just go to the website and post it, and we'll churn through that as a team and get you an answer.
Yep, perfect. Eric asked, will companies who have shown prior private industry commercialization be favored or penalized for that portion of evaluation?
Go ahead, yeah.
I was going to say, this has to be technology that hasn't been commercialized. Otherwise, the process for tracking and maturing is simply not going to work. But if it's a new technology and you have experience doing that, we would hope to see that in your business plan. And I think that would give you an advantage with your prior experiences of success towards that. Z?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. As you'll see, if you can actually, Laura, go back to the selection criteria, that might be helpful. Or Nathan, I think you've got control of it. But with the selection criteria, we're looking at the business and technical team. And so understanding the credentials of the business team and the technical team, including, as Nathan said, any experience with commercialization as a team, not related to this particular technology, but prior experience is certainly relevant to note, especially from a business point of view.
All right, great. Max asked, said thank you, and then said, should the projects have a specific physical deliverable, or is concrete progress toward commercialization sufficient?
Yeah, so that is what we are requiring and focused on, is the commercialization. So rather than asking for a specific physical deliverable, it is your deliverable is the commercialization plan, and then we'll be measuring and requiring reporting, and we'll be working with you to focus on reporting that progress. One of the things that's really key here, I'll talk about also, that may be a related question, is, well, what about getting this back into DoD eventually, right? Because we want to, it's almost, to some, it might be a counterintuitive approach. You push companies into the commercial market in order to benefit DoD. We do that because we want to really allow you to focus exclusively on the commercial market, but never fear, meanwhile, the USPAE folks and the government team working this will be taking on some of the responsibility for assessing and engaging folks in the defense market and prepping that market for potential integration and incorporation of that technology down the road. So we're not going to put that on the team. We want to unburden the team, the finalists and the awardees from that, but we will be working towards that in parallel so that we can actually integrate that technology back into defense overall.
Okay, great. Jeffrey asked, can a small business retain its IP, or will the DoD own it?
This is a debate in many of the federal government acquisition processes, right? Here's the thing. IP, if you've developed it under CBERS, it may have some constraints related to that already. If you've negotiated that in prior contracts, fine. Well, this DBX process will proceed with that. So you just have to manage that based on your prior work. If it's something new, it has not been developed with the federal government funding, then obviously you'd own the IP. What this DBX challenge really is about is the business process and the commercialization. So we'll have more details that has been discussed in the rules. There's a rules page, but there's a whole lot of nuances to intellectual property and who owns it and what. So if my answer is insufficient, please post a question. Also read some of the details in the rules page.
Yeah, let me put a real fine point on it. So what Nathan talked about regarding any pre-existing IP restrictions from previous money you may have received, let's set that aside for a second, because that is what it is, right? In terms of the funding received under this funding is focused on commercialization. And so we did that in order to ensure that we're not putting IP restrictions on this technology that prevents that commercialization. And for most people, we're going to be looking at surface rights here. That doesn't restrict you from using the technology for commercial applications. It just gives the government the right to actually access the developments that were done with government funding. So IP will be handled in a way that does not prevent you from commercializing the technology and ensures that the government gets a fair deal out of what the government is spending money on.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Let's see here. I think there are a number of questions about this. I feel like we've covered it, but I just want to be really clear. I have a few questions about where your company can be based. So are Canadian companies eligible, for example? Can you speak to the broad who's allowed in kind of scope?
Yeah, so the requirement is you have to be U.S. incorporated. And so if you have that, that's important. If you have ties to, we'll say, headquarters or other subsidiaries related in other allied countries, that's generally acceptable. But again, you have to have the U.S. incorporation to submit for this.
Okay, thank you. All right, Zaynep said, you mentioned commercialization support will be provided, but is the funding intended to be mostly for technology development and productization?
Yes, so we do want you to be able to mature the technology, and we are putting the funding towards that for sure. We are also, as a part of the commercialization support, going to be providing some support with access to private capital. With the commercial market application, certainly there's going to be interest from private investors in putting funding towards that technology, and that is something that we're building out. We haven't fully defined the commercialization toolkit, but areas that we know will be incorporated are support with understanding the market, support with productizing it, support with finding access to funding, support with maturing the manufacturing of that technology. And we've also got folks from a technical point of view, if your team needs technical help, that are from the Army Research Lab that have offered to support from a technical subject matter expert perspective as well. So.
Wonderful, thank you. I have another question. Are collaborative projects between multiple organizations or companies allowed?
That's a very interesting question. We haven't thought about that. I was going to think through that out loud here. I think that certainly could be done. The challenge would be the business side of that. So if the companies from a collaborative point of view are already engaged in a formal legal joint venture, then that makes that certainly easier. If it is two companies that together have an idea of how they would work together, but haven't already established that legal entity that would execute the work, I think that's something that the application would have to address, is how does it address that performing entity for a project that is collaborative. If one company has the lead and another company is supporting it, then I think that checks the box. If it's we don't know, we're going to figure it out later, I think that becomes an impediment in the selection process from my perspective. So that's my off the cuff answer to that very good question that we hadn't actually thought about in talking through this ahead of time. Nathan, additional comments?
I will say, don't let that be a restriction for proposing. there's a lot of unknowns that we'll probably come across with some great ideas, and really that I think is what's most important. Is so if in doubt, please apply, and we'll figure it out.
Yeah, we've made the, as Nathan said, it's a very simple application process. This is not a lengthy investment for you guys to put time into. So we would, err on the side of sending us your ideas, versus feeling like there's a high barrier to submitting those ideas.
Great, thank you. And just a reminder, everyone, we have 10 more minutes, so keep asking your questions, get them in. We'll be sure to answer them, whether here or afterward. I have a question from Jeffrey. We have already filed one patent that is pending. Is that an issue?
No, that is not an issue at all.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Yeah, actually patent and IP, securing your IP is certainly an element of commercialization that's very important. And as folks from an investment point of view are looking at investing in technologies, whether it's through patent or other IP protection strategies, that is going to be a question that those investors would be asking. So if you've already thought about that and even made some progress in that area, that's certainly very important to cover.
Okay, great. Rahul asked, how many pages is the commercialization plan? I think it's a max of 2 allowable. Sound right, Nathan?
That's right. And again, you can go to the website, you can see the form. It's pretty lightweight. So being succinct and to the point will help us in reviewing, but also probably formulate your ideas better towards a pitch event. So keep it simple, keep it effective, and we'll look forward to seeing it.
Alrighty, let's see. So I've gotten a few questions about Department of Defense interest, and I think especially for folks who maybe haven't achieved that or aren't sure how to do it. So I'll go ahead and ask one of them, but if you can speak a little bit more to that. We're not sure how we can obtain evidence of expression of DoD interest, as we have not had prior projects with the government. Can you let us know how to get it?
Well, so I would say that so DoD funding is one, but you're not gonna, if you haven't gotten it yet and you don't have a proposal in that's under evaluation. Just to be very candid, you're not going to get DoD funding between now and the time that the applications are due. I think similar to an expression of DoD interest, even getting a letter. So a lot of companies might have submitted a phase 2 SBIR proposal. And sometimes other transaction agreements have these where the government reviews your technology and they essentially give you a interested, but we don't have any funding for this. Those types of letters qualify as a statement of interest, and those can come from submissions to OTAs and submissions to SBIRs. Sometimes also companies obtain those as a part of applying for a SBIR, where you get a memorandum from a government office that indicates that they've reviewed your technology and they're interested in that. That also qualifies. But the lead time to get those in general is not a couple of days, and it takes time. So if you don't already have a government customer that you've talked with and that has expressed interest, again, just very candidly, I don't think you're going to be able to achieve that precondition prior to the submission deadline. If you've had folks that you've talked to, but you just haven't gotten anything in writing, then I would work very quickly with them to ask them to document that in a formal way, on a formal letterhead that they sign that indicates, here's my office, here's what I'm interested in, I've reviewed the technology, here's what the technology is, and here's why I'm interested in it. And then that checks the box for us in terms of the precondition of defense interest.
Thank you.
And I'll just add, building connections with different DoD offices and federal government is something that we do at USPA and the Defense Electronics Consortium. But even then, your current technology raising awareness with our existing connections, as Zee mentioned, takes more time than what is have for the application deadline.
Yes, that is a great reason to be part of a consortium there as well. Is it acceptable, Jeffrey asked, is it acceptable if the current TRL level was achieved with DOE funding?
So the precondition is DoD funding or interest. So if you don't have DoD funding or interest, then you don't meet the precondition there. If you have DoD and DOE on top of that, then that's certainly fine. There's no, so if the question is, does DOE funding meet the precondition of DoD interest, the answer is no. If the question is there an issue if we have received DOE funding, the answer is no, there's no issue with that.
Yeah, I would say there's probably an overlap, a caveat that goes with Z's statement as well. If and I say it's only coming from the Department of Energy National Laboratory System under National Nuclear Security Administration. There's only a few labs that do that, right? The NNSA is a joint defense mission, so that's a maybe. That's something for us to decide as an evaluation team if your funding and technology maturity came through the NNSA labs.
Okay, great. Christian asked, will there be funds available for this program if the DoD is under a continuing resolution?
So these funds have already been placed on contract and are authorized. So thankfully, we have a continuing resolution, which we're grateful for, and hopefully the budget will be passed before the end of that continuing resolution. But even in the event that there is a gap come mid-November, this program will continue and is authorized to continue. There may be some, as we prepared for a potential shutdown here over the weekend, there were some restrictions on travel that were levied on contractors, that were going to be levied on contractors, but in terms of execution of the funds, they're already on contract and there wouldn't be any restrictions there.
Great. Shane asked, are there restrictions on the use of funds, for example, on the purchase of pilot scale equipment?
We have not put those restrictions in place, no.
Okay. Ellen asked, does the PI have to have DoD clearance?
So we're not requiring security clearance for the execution of the work, assuming that's what's needed. And then Nathan can talk to the other sort of DoD registration requirements.
Yeah, I mean, the clearance, again, keep in mind, is tied to potential work on the DoD side, the classified, the sensitive. When you go to a commercial market, it's a very different game. And so clearance is not going to be required for that. But if it's helped you with those connections and established government interests, that's great. On the government registrations, again, the primary one is sam.gov, your unique identifier, and a CAGE code. Now, CAGE codes are issued by Defense Logistics Agency, DLA. We have a lot of information about how to obtain those if you don't have them already. The CAGE codes, I think, have a little bit longer lead time than the sam.gov registrations. So, again, we have all that information that can help you out via the USPA website.
Great. All right, Hunter asked, what are the reporting or deliverable requirements if awarded?
Yeah, so the deliverables really focused on that commercialization plan and the progress towards that commercialization plan. We're actually working with ATI, who would be issuing the subcontracts to the performers, or sub-agreements to the performers, I should say, to come up with a standard form so that we can accelerate the award process for those awardees that are selected. But it'll be relatively straightforward and very focused on commercialization and reporting on progress. We're structuring the reporting requirements in line with what would typically be required from a limited partner in an investment fund. So that type of reporting that's very commercial friendly versus the sometimes burdensome reporting that can come with other government contracts or defense contracts. We're focusing more on that commercial information reportability that would be typical of an LP in a venture fund.
All right, I think we have time for one more. Austin asked, would a letter of support from a prime contractor such as Raytheon work as evidence of DoD interest?
I don't know that we've specified it, but I'll answer that here. Yes, and we definitely want to make sure we're updating that. One of the things that you'll hear from a lot of insightful panels that I've heard on access to the defense market is the importance of the existing prime contractors and the contracts that they have as mechanisms to insert your technology. Many of the funding pathways for existing systems that they're already tied up in contracts. And if you want to get onto that platform, onto that system, the only way to get onto it is through that prime contractor. And so in line with that, the statement of support and interest from that prime contractor is definitely a statement of interest from the DoD as they're operating in support of the DoD.
Awesome. I just want to thank you both for being here and speaking more about the challenge. And thank you to all of the attendees who've made it here and asked fantastic questions. You've certainly got us thinking about a few more things, and we will follow up with all of you individually or in our FAQ on the website. Don't forget the submission deadline is coming up October 12th, and we look forward to seeing all of your innovations come through and to working with you in the future. So thanks, everyone. Have a good one.
Thank you so much.